These four companies have many things in common. First of all, they are all very powerful and almost all of us rely on their services and products on a daily basis. Second, all of these companies gather and use our personal data as part of their business models. Last week, the CEOs of these four companies had to testify before the United States Congress to defend some of its business practices in light of their market power and in light of all of the data they own. This congressional hearing revealed, or at least confirmed, a few pretty interesting things. As an example, the hearing shed some light on the real rationale behind many of the previous acquisitions that some of these companies have made. Unsurprisingly, when these companies acquire other startups, it's often more about market position and competition than about innovation and technology. The hearing also demonstrated that many US lawmakers have adopted a pretty aggressive stance towards these companies, and it's now being speculated what the hearing could lead to, both in terms of new legislation but also in terms of new enforcement action in the US. And speaking of enforcement, let's proceed to what I will talk about in this video, namely competition law enforcement action against GAFA in Europe. Here's the thing, these four companies have a third important factor in common, and that is that they all are American. In a time when one of the European Union's main strategic goals is to foster and encourage European digital startups and to protect European citizens' personal data, these three factors jointly create somewhat of a perfect storm to attract attention to the GAFA companies from European competition law enforcers. In this video, I will talk about the 5 most interesting competition law battles that are being fought right now between the GAFA companies and European competition law enforcers. And to do that, where better to start than with Google. The European Commission is not cutting Google any slack. The Google Shopping case, Google Android case, and Google Ads case have together resulted in over 8 billion euros in fines. The European Commission has also confirmed that at least 2 other preliminary investigations are currently looking into other practices by Google. One probe looks at Google's job search services, and another one looks at Google's as well as Facebook's data gathering practices. There's not much information out about these investigations yet, so look at something more interesting, namely Google's acquisition of Fitbit. Towards the end of last year, Google announced that they are acquiring fitness tracking company Fitbit. This acquisition will help Google to compete with Apple's smartwatches, but will also lead to Google taking over huge amounts of data that Fitbit has gathered from its users over the years. The current power of GAFA companies has to some extent been built by acquisitions exactly like this, by swallowing fast-growing, data-heavy companies in neighboring digital markets. Some famous examples include Google's 2005 acquisition of Android and 2006 acquisition of YouTube, Amazon's 2014 acquisition of Twitch, Facebook's 2014 acquisition of WhatsApp and 2012 acquisition of Instagram, and Apple's 2018 acquisition of Shazam. Those who are critical of how powerful the GAFA companies have become and how much data they now own often point to acquisitions like this and argue that the merger control regimes must be adapted to allow more scrutiny of data assets in merger reviews. Such criticism has now also been directed towards the Google Fitbit transaction. The other week, a group of 20 different public privacy organizations across the globe issued a statement raising concerns over, among other things, Google's ability to exploit Fitbit's valuable health and location datasets in order to strengthen its dominant position in online advertising. Google's acquisition of Fitbit is now being reviewed by the European Commission, and the other day, the European Commission opened an in-depth so-called Phase 2 investigation. The outcome of this review could shed some light on how the Commission intends to approach data assets going forward, and more specifically, the Commission's approach to the controversial issue of data access remedies. In other words, commitments by companies to share its data. The Commission's Competition Commissioner Vestager has previously indicated that data sharing remedies should be on the table in cases dealing with market power through personal data. The head of the German Competition Authority, Andreas Mundt, on the other hand, has raised concerns over whether such data access remedies can be effectively implemented. Hopefully, the Commission's Google Fitbit investigation will provide useful findings on the viability of such remedies. Let's continue to the next interesting competition law battle, the one between European Commission and Amazon over Amazon's use of data on its e-commerce platform. To explain what this case is about, let's first imagine a mall owner in the brick and mortar world where retailers can rent physical retail space for their shops. Then imagine that the mall owner has a super efficient surveillance system in place that monitors every single move that every customer make within the shops of the mall. Thanks to the surveillance system, the mall owner can build data profiles for each customer that includes information on what the customer buys, when the customer goes to the mall, which products it looks at and for how long, as well as, of course, their demographic information and so forth. Then finally, imagine that this mall owner opens up its own shops right next to each shop in the mall. In other words, next to the mall's hardware store, the mall owner opens its own hardware store. Next to the mall's electronics store, the mall owner opens its own electronic stores, and so forth. The mall owner then uses its data from the super efficient mall surveillance system to direct its customers towards its own shops instead of the competitor shops. In a nutshell, this is what the Commission suspects that Amazon is doing, but in an online setting on its online Amazon platform and not with physical stores. In July 2019, the European Commission formally opened an investigation into whether Amazon abuses its dominant position by using sensitive data that it has gathered from the independent retailers who sell on its marketplace to benefit Amazon's own retail sales. This investigation mirrors the comments from US Senator Elizabeth Warren, who has been critical of Amazon, saying that you can be an umpire or you can be a player, but you can't be both. Reports are now floating around saying that the European Commission is preparing to bring charges against Amazon in this pretty interesting case. Let's continue to the third interesting competition law battle, the one fought between the German Competition Authority and Facebook. Everybody knows by now that Facebook's business model is all about gathering data and leveraging that data to earn money on advertising. To execute this business model, Facebook seeks to gather and process data from as many sources as it can. First of all, it gathers data from its own properties, the Facebook social media platform of course, but also Instagram and WhatsApp. In addition to that, Facebook also gathers data from third-party sites and apps that uses Facebook technology to support certain functions such as logins and likings. Facebook then merge all of this data gathered in different places into a comprehensive profile of private individuals. The more comprehensive these profiles are, the more valuable they are to Facebook when monetizing through ad sales. In 2019, the German Competition Authority found that Facebook's data collection and combination can constitute abuse of dominance if Facebook does not adequately secure consent for the collection from its users. Accordingly, the German Competition Authority ordered Facebook to cease some of this data collection conduct. Facebook fought back and managed to get an injunction that suspended this order, but earlier this summer, the German Federal Supreme Court in Karlsruhe lifted this injunction by holding that a failure by a dominant company to secure consent for extensive data gathering and combination can constitute abuse under relevant competition laws. Of course, Facebook's appeal of the underlying finding of infringement is still pending, and we do not know yet how this case will end, but the decision to lift the injunction means that Facebook must cease some of its data aggregating conduct until the underlying case is resolved. I am personally a big fan of this case, as it illustrates how competition law can be pliable and dynamic enough to tackle also new forms of competition problems, including exploitation of data by companies that wield significant market power. Let's continue to the fourth competition law battle. This summer, the European Commission formally opened an investigation that will look at whether certain policies that Apple applies on the App Store are compatible with EU competition law. One App Store policy the Commission will look at relates to so-called in-app purchases. If you download an app on the App Store and then want to purchase something within that app, for example, a premium subscription to the app, then the App Store policy requires that this in-app purchase is made through Apple's proprietary in-app purchase system. Using this system allows Apple to charge the app developer a 30% commission on the fee for such in-app purchases. Another policy the Commission will look at relates to how app developers can inform its users about purchasing alternatives. The App Store policies do not prohibit you from buying things that are relevant to the app outside the app. For example, you can buy a premium subscription to an app directly on the app developer's own website and then log in with that subscription within the app. However, the App Store policies do not allow the app developer to inform its users within the app about the possibility of acquiring a subscription outside the app, for example on the app developer's own website. According to the Commission, the App Store policies have already led to third-party app developers having to raise their subscription fees to cover the commission to Apple, or disabling their in-app purchasing possibility altogether. A focus in the Commission's investigation into the App Store policies will be how they affect competition between third-party apps and Apple's own apps. For example, competition between Spotify and Apple Music, or between third-party ebook apps and Apple Books. As a matter of fact, this investigation was actually opened following complaints by Spotify. And if you allow me to speculate, I think that the Commission feels pretty excited about this case. Spotify happens to be the only significant global digital company to come out of Europe, and this case allows the Commission to help Spotify stand up to all-American GAFA. The fifth competition law battle also concerns Apple. The same day the European Commission formally opened the investigation into the policies of App Store, they also formally opened an investigation into Apple Pay. Apple Pay is a digital wallet service that Apple includes on its devices, such as iPhones. Apple Pay allows you to connect a debit or credit card to your phone and then pay with a phone, for example by using tap-and-go technology in physical stores or when paying for something within iOS apps or on websites. The European Commission's investigation now looks into the terms and conditions Apple applies when Apple Pay is integrated by third-party apps and websites. The investigation also looks at how Apple restricts the near-field communication technology that enables tap-and-go payments on iPhones. Apple currently reserves this technology on its devices to Apple Pay. The Commission's investigation will focus on how these aspects of Apple Pay could impact competition between Apple Pay and competing mobile payment solutions. So those were the 5 most interesting competition law battles that are being fought right now between GAFA companies and European competition law enforcers. I hope you enjoyed, and thanks for watching.